When the vehicle's locked and you approach it with the key, when you get fairly close to it, it will sense the key, and all it's going to do is turn on, it's going to unfold the side mirrors, but it also just turn on this little handle light. So there's no approach lights, there's no safety lights as far as like the parking lights or anything like that turn on. There's no approach lights to help you navigate the ground to get to the vehicle. Now if you hit the unlock button, it turns on the interior lights. The headlights and taillights are now on, which is really good for safety. But still, there's no approach lights here on the side. There's no lights on the side except for that one light here on the handle. When you have the headlight switched to the complete off position and the vehicle's running, you still have these exterior lights in amber here in the front that are still on. There's no tail lights on, but the front lights, they are amber, so you're not going to mistake these as your headlights, which is good. But they do give you some exterior lights on, even though the headlight switch is off. If you want to turn these completely off when the vehicle's running, you engage the parking brake. When I turn the headlight switch to the parking lights position, these amber lights are still on here in the front. And it's like a little bit brighter amber light than the actual side marker, which is here. It's more like a yellowish amber, and this is more of a deeper amber as a side marker here in the front. The tail lights are now on, and there's a side marker, kind of a bright light right in here as a side marker, and the tail lights kind of wrap around a little bit to the side of the vehicle so they can be seen. But the tail lights are red, and that kind of has this multiple tier light, vertical lights here that kind of swoop over to the inner portion of the vehicle. There at the top, the tag lights are now on, and they illuminate the ground a little bit, so that kind of helps as an approach light. The turn signal is very bright. It's an amber color. It's basically the same light we saw before, but it's just flashing amber, bright amber. It's very bright. There's also an amber side turn signal indicator here on the side mirror. It's visible from the front, the side, and the back, and that's fairly bright as well. And the turn signal is basically just the tail light flashing red, just a much brighter red. Let's turn the headlights on now. So there's the low beams, there's the high beams, and we're going to look at this going down the road as well, but there's the low beams. And the low beams are two projector LEDs. Now the projector LEDs, you can see it's two here on each side. So, and they're able to refocus for the high beams. So it basically looks like the same thing for the low and the high beams. The fog lights are 4 projectors here on each side, and they work really well. They look nice as well. Really low position, which is what you want. All right, and then there's a clear cutoff for the low beams, so they're fairly high, so we're a good 3 feet off the ground, and that's where the cutoff is. Now let's turn on the high beams. And the high beams are those upper portion, those 2 projectors. They're refocused, but you also have a reflector here at the bottom that turns on and adds to it. Fog lights are now off. We have all these lights. Have a little bit of fog in the air so you can kind of see the beams a little bit, which is pretty cool. Cargo light has a single light here in the center, right there. And it just shines there in the center. So you'll notice there's quite a bit of dark areas here on the sides. Also behind the seat. So, in my opinion, this is not an adequate cargo light system here. There's also buttons and power supply here on the left side that are completely dark. You can't see them. So, dark buttons, a single light. It is fairly bright, but you know, it could be better, of course. So there's things here in the dark that you can't really see until I put them in the light. So, that's that. There's also a backlit button here to lower the power lift gate, which is nice. The third row is illuminated by these 2 lights, one on each side of the sunroof there, which does a pretty decent job of illuminating this back seat. There's also USB charge ports back here that are backlit illuminated on both sides. Here's one on this side as well. You can see that. So yeah, this isn't bad. Now, if you have these seats folded down, this would add to the cargo light space. I mean, this area would be cargo at that point, so that would be okay lights for that purpose, but it's good for the seats. In this case, the second row has the lights there in the center. You also have backlit buttons for climate control and stuff back here as well, which is pretty cool. But you do have 12-volt power supply and power inverter back here that's not illuminated. But overall, you do have a decent amount of light. It illuminates the floor, the seats, mostly shining in the lap area. The inside of the back door, you only have the buttons that are backlit. There's also some illumination, like ambient accent lighting, which is not shining now. For some reason, when the door is open, I see a little bit there on the front, but for whatever reason, it's not illuminating right now. The front door, same thing. It does not have the, you can see the accent light here. It's in the doors as well. I'll show you that shortly. But it's not shining when we had the door open. We do have a reflector down here. We have backlit buttons, but we don't have any pocket lights. There's no puddle lights or anything like that. Just completely dark door right now. The front lights are provided by these 2 lights here in the center. Now, of course, the lights in the back, they kind of work together a little bit of overlap. But, you know, that's just the way it is. This is the way it looks. Now, when the door is open, you can see no floorboard illumination. So there's no floorboard illumination at all, basically. So even when the door's open or closed. There is USB charge ports there in the back of each seat. They're on the side, actually. They're not illuminated. And there's a lot of not illuminated areas. We'll get to that in just a second. Yeah, this is what it looks like with the door open, with the interior lights on. So you can see the door here. Let's go ahead and shut it. Now, the ambient accent light turns on. Not sure why they chose to do that. So the interior lights are kind of surprising that there's some lacking issues in here. For one thing, there's no floorboard illumination when the door is shut. This center console is completely dark. So I'm gonna have to turn on the interior lights. Wait a minute, the interior lights, the button for the interior lights is not even illuminated. So up here, there's some buttons here, but the actual button for turning on the interior lights, you can't see it, and the only time you would want to use that button is when it's dark. So for some reason the button's not illuminated, but I know right where it is, but that's just a complete oversight. And I have to turn the interior lights on because this is completely dark. This whole area right here is completely dark. So as I turn on the light, there's no lights here as well. So this whole area is just completely dark. The glove compartment, surprisingly, does have a light in it. We do have some pretty cool accent lighting there, here in the front and in the back, but a lot of missed opportunities here as far as the lighting. Kind of surprised. There is backlit buttons here on the steering wheel. So the accent lighting, it's kind of like a cherry on the top, but if you don't have the foundation, then it just seems a little, I don't know, it's a little bit overdone in some areas and not done well at all in other areas, you know. So there is these lights that you can push to turn on like this. The visors do have lights in them. Turn on and off when you open up the mirrors. Let's go ahead and put it, let's go ahead and turn on the camera so we can see the camera system is good. It brightens up everything around the vehicle so that way you can see it. Of course you have the lights, but also the actual camera itself brightens it up as well. Now the ambient light is kind of set to like a purplish blue, and I have the brightness up all the way. Let's go to the color options here. There's different ones. So there's blue flight. Let's go ahead and cycle through them here. So there's the first one's blue flight, peaceful forest, dreamy purple, violet cloud, orange delight, golden insight, refreshing sea, and then custom color. And then when you set the custom color here at the bottom, you have this color wheel in which you can choose what you want, kind of go around. I'm going to go into more of a deeper purple like so. Kind of looks blue though. Let's see here. Let's go to bring it down a little bit. Now it's starting to get into the pink zone. But yeah, I'm just going to kind of go around the color wheel just so you can see different ones here. Alright, so there we go. It's supposed to be in that purple zone, but it still looks a little bit blue to me. So hopefully you can see the headlight pattern there against those bushes. It's basically a cutoff line. There's a lot of parking lot lights right now. But you can see, hopefully, there's a little bit of a dip for the oncoming traffic. But it's basically a line. It's about 3 feet off the ground from my, just estimation. So it's about, in line with the height of the vehicle, I guess, which is, we'll find out how good it is, because it's good to have a higher up headlight, but at the same time, you don't want it blinding other people. So we'll see how that goes. Also, it has automatic high beams, which I'll go ahead and turn that on. There we go. So far I hadn't had a problem, but sometimes the automatic high beams, most vehicles have issues with them. So yeah, those low beams look awfully high as far as shining in people's faces and stuff, but we'll see. Yeah, look, the actual cutoff is higher on the sides than there on the oncoming lane. There's a little bit of a dip, and as you go further out, the bigger the dip is, basically, on that oncoming lane. So yeah, you can kind of see it. It's kind of hard to point out unless you're aiming the vehicle down on the road, but so yeah, that kind of gives it the illusion that it's a little bit too high. And it might be a little bit too high there on the sides, but, we'll see if it potentially causes a problem. So far, it looks fine. It looks okay. And with the 2 projectors on each side, and then you add the reflector for the high beams, there's 3 lights on each side. So the overlap and the evenness on the road should be pretty decent, especially with the combination of projector and reflector. I'm pull off to the side of the road here for a second and wait for these cars to pass. All right. Okay. So now we're in a dark area, and man, we can see pretty good. There is a little bit of a patchiness to the lights, and when the fog lights turn off, it's a little bit close to the vehicle is kind of dark. But see what it looks like again right in here. Okay, yeah, that's pretty good. It projects down. I can see those trees in the distance, and the low beams are still really good. So it maintains the visibility even on the low beams there on the sides. So yeah, right in there, we can see those trees in the distance, and it projects down the road nicely, and it's fairly evenly lit. Yeah, it's fairly evenly lit. You know, that there's still that little bit of a patch of darkness area on the oncoming lane, just because that's still there. It's just adding with the high beams. Also, we have a decent height off the ground, so we can project the light further down. We're not... The variations in height of the road doesn't affect the visibility as much, because your eyes are higher than the actual headlights. So sometimes you cast shadows and stuff with the vehicle that's low, but this one's high up, so we can see pretty good. Now, these aren't super impressive headlights, but they are definitely good. They're good headlights, in my opinion. And the thing about LEDs that some people get mixed up, they're not actually that much brighter typically than a halogen. Certainly not brighter than an HID, high intensity discharge bulbs, but they're just whiter, so that whiter light can give you better visibility. It's just but it's easily mistaken as brighter. I mean, a lot of halogens are not that bright, so it depends on the brightness. You can get very bright halogens, but they're just not white. They have like a yellowish color because they're relying on heating up metal to provide a light instead of an LED, which is a diode, light emitting diode, which you can control the hue and the hue and the color and everything very precisely with LEDs. So far, the automatic high beams are working well, which I'm glad to see. Some vehicles, the automatic high beams will flash other cars and stuff. Especially if the oncoming car has like one headlight out, or if they have kind of dim headlights. Sometimes I've had vehicles where, and I hadn't been able to catch it on camera, but it'll have low beams on, and then the car will get really close, and then like right up at the worst moment, it'll switch to high beams and just fry their eyes. Because it's not picking up the headlights as headlights, or picking them up as reflections or something else. So yeah, the automatic high beams are sometimes problematic, but this vehicle so far has been good.